Hello and welcome back to Talk of the Bay. I'm your host, PK Haddis. If you spend enough time walking the California coast, you're bound to eventually see some signs of whale activity. The signs are just going to be really small. A tiny spout of white water, the breach of a dark blue figure that spins and slaps the waves as it tumbles back into the sea. Don't get me wrong, these images inspire real joy and awe in the hearts of those lucky enough to witness them, no matter how far away they are. But it's people like my next guest who help us truly appreciate the raw beauty of these sea creatures by bringing the images up close and personal. Jodi Frediani is an award-winning nature photographer who has been capturing images of majestic and, at times, ferocious whales of all shapes and sizes in the Monterey Bay for decades. Her dedication to her craft has also nurtured an indispensable expertise on marine life and has led to a number of collaborations with various national and international research and conservation groups. She is also co-editor of Wild Monterey Bay, a collection of memorable wildlife encounters from 40 people who work and play in the Monterey Bay region. Frediani is here in studio to tell us more about what she's seeing out in the water and what has made this whale watching season stand out from others in recent memory. Jodi, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you for the invite to be here with you.
Okay, just to set the stage here, could you tell us what is peak whale watching season as somebody who's done it for decades now? What was the prime time to get out there?
You know, one of the most amazing things about Monterey Bay is that it's almost always peak whale watching season.
That's a
it
good
just
answer.
depends which whales you want to see. So in the wintertime, we've got gray whales heading south to the breeding grounds. In the spring, we've got them coming back with their calves. And during late spring to early fall, we have humpback whales here. And so, you know, I would say if you gotta make a choice, come in the summertime. But if you really want to see, you know, gray whales, then you got to come when the gray whales are passing through. And if you want to see killer whales, you have to have your lucky charm.
Which could just be you, because you've had several encounters with killer whales, even recently in recent days and weeks. Could you tell me about that experience?
I would also say perseverance is a
Right.
good thing to have as well.
Indeed.
But you know, just say the killer whales that we see here generally. I mean, every once in a while we might see residents from further north, but these are called transients, and they are otherwise known as Biggs whales, and they move up and down the coast, and they feed on marine mammals. There are other killer whales that feed on fish. And so they come here when the gray whales are bringing their calves by. Some of them specialize in taking down gray whale calves. They come here for sea lions, and as we've seen this past week, they come here for dolphins. So it's not like SeaWorld, that you pay your money and you get in there and you know they're going to be there. They come when they're hungry, when they're in the neighborhood, you know, whatever it is. And this past week was most extraordinary. I was out on Sunday. Apparently there was a repeat on Monday. One of my favorite killer whales, local, is a female named Louise. And killer whales are matriarchal, so that you've got these pods where the offspring stay with the mother their whole lives. The males may go off. And if anybody's seen the orca on the Santa Cruz Metro bus going around town, that's Louise.
You spoiled it. I was going to surprise our listeners with that fun fact, but
sorry.
I'm just giving you a hard time. That's great. It must have been quite an honor.
She's also on our book. But she was out there. I was with Monterey Bay Whale Watch on their boat, the Blackfin. We left Monterey Harbor. We'd already heard reports that there were killer whales over by Moss Landing. And that was sort of confirmed because we've got a lot of common dolphins, like thousands of common dolphins in the bay. And they spend most of their time more in Southern California, but the water's a bit warmer, so they've come up here. They like the warmer water. They were all hightailing it towards Monterey. that said to us, that confirmed, yeah, there's killer whales are leaving that area. And, when we arrived, we could see them doing what I call their transect, like they're looking for something to feed on. So they might be here, and then they move, quarter mile that way, and then somewhere else. And the next thing is a small group of common dolphins came through, and it was like, okay. And the next thing, it was like popcorn. I mean, the Louise and some of her offspring were flying through the air, punting dolphins one way after another, and it was hard to know where to look. And I somehow got incredibly lucky and had my camera pointed in the right direction when Louise came up, and a half a dozen shots in maybe a second or two. This dolphin and they're both dolphins, actually. They both have a single blowhole, and they have teeth, which makes them dolphins, but they're also whales. They're called the Donaceae whales as opposed to Mystaceae whales, which the humpbacks are. And so there was.
How do you identify Louise? Does she have a tag or can you just tell by her spots? How do you go about?
I often identify her when the killer whale researchers tell me who it is.
Fair enough.
The way they are able to do it is from the eye patch. Okay, they've all got this white eye patch, and they've got distinctive markings sometimes or distinctive shape. From the saddle patch, which is behind their dorsal fin, which gets scratches over the years. So those are unique to the individual animal. And the dorsal fin, and she's got a bit of a nick on the trailing edge of her dorsal fin. So, and in this case, once this is Louise and this is her pod, you're looking for the largest animal. You look for that little nick because they're moving really fast, and you look for the experience and the prowess. I mean, she's magnificent.
How old is she? How large do these whales end up being? At least killer whales.
Ask me about humpback whales.
Okay, we can go in that direction too. I was just keeping Louise front and center.
I don't know how old she is. I know she's got several generations. I'm not real good at numbers anyways. And they're big. I mean, one of the most amazing things that happened on Sunday was that one of the common dolphins that they killed was a mother and had a calf. And so for the next 5 hours, this calf kind of tagged along with some of Louise's kids, particularly a young one named Little B, who's not so little anymore. And I didn't manage to get a picture of them together, but when you looked at them, that little dolphin was like a speck. I mean, it was just on the side of this killer whale. So they're far bigger. I'm sorry I can't give you numbers. They're far bigger than you would imagine. I want to say 15, 20 feet, something like that, but I know my humpback whales.
We'll get there. Well, this is a question regarding humpback whales too, I assume, or maybe there's different answers to it. But how far out to sea are you when you're chasing these whales typically? I mean, could a surfer bump into one, on a wave, or we talking way further out?
All of that. So you mentioned shore. I was on Monday. I had an appointment over on 41st Avenue. Went down to Pleasure Point to eat my pizza, and I'm looking out there. It was really calm, and I could see blows. And we guessed they were about 2 miles offshore. And finally, my binoculars are at home. Shame. Finally, 4 people showed up with binoculars, and I, started talking to them and let me borrow it. And there was one whale watch vessel out there, another one coming from Moss Landing, and there must have been a dozen to 2 dozen humpbacks feeding. But I had the opportunity today to go out with a fast raft from Moss Landing, and 10 minutes out of the harbor there were humpback whales there. Sometimes they're over by Marina, sometimes they're down along the Big Sur coast. They are where the food is, and they're it's not as simple as that. I mean, it is as simple as that, but the question is, where's the food? And we've got this deep, deep marine canyon that runs out of Moss Landing out to the ocean and then branches off and goes down towards Carmel. You've got a little branch that's called off of Soquel, towards Soquel. And you've got cold water down there. And that cold water brings up nutrients. There's an upwelling. And so that's a good place to find along that interface. But most of the whales are usually found from kind of the canyon over towards Monterey. And yet I was out on an all-day with Monterey Bay Whale Watch a week or so ago, and the humpbacks were off at Davenport. So,
sometimes there's seemingly no rhyme or reason.
Right. And I will, well, we'll go ahead. I'll answer it later.
Well, I alluded to this in my introduction, so let's get into it now. I'm curious why this season has been so different, or it sounds to me in just talking to you briefly about your experiences that this season has been a little bit different than past seasons. So is that true, and how so?
Well, let's put it this way. It always has to do with memory, Mm-hmm. But when a lot of people are having similar memories, you can say, yeah, it seems a bit different. And I think there are a number of things going on. One is that we've got warmer water in the bay. We've got this El Nino forming down off of, Central America and South America, which all the weather people are predicting is going to be like a super El Nino, and maybe something we haven't seen before. We're also seeing warmer water in the bay, and I was talking to, the captain this morning, and she said, 20 years ago, 61 degrees was unheard of in the bay. And I think it was last week or so, over on the Monterey side, it was almost 64 degrees. Today it was, I believe, 59 over the canyon. So it's usually cooler over the canyon. That has some effect, but it's hard to say what the effect is, in the same way that the weather guys are not, or weather folks are not sure whether we're going to get drenched in rain up here or not. But the other thing that I've learned is that earlier in this season, the anchovy fishing fleet was out, and they kind of cleaned out the bay. And so that had a lot to do with the humpbacks not being here or showing up later. When
you say anchovy fleet, sorry to interrupt you, are you talking about like fishermen and people, humans? Or are you talking about animals or the anchovies themselves?
No.
That are okay?
Human fishing boats, fishermen, fishers, fishing for anchovies, which are mostly used, sold. I was hearing to feed tuna, being raised in captivity in Australia, salmon farms, and so that was happening, and there were not a lot of anchovies around for the humpbacks. That seems to be what was going on. I think a sidebar of that was, without that many anchovies, there was a lot of krill, and we suddenly had blue whales and fin whales. So for a while, you could go out for 10 days or so, and in every direction you looked, there were blue whales. And these are the largest animals that have ever lived on the planet. So there's blue whales, the fin whales are the next largest whale. I mean, it was crazy. So, but right now the humpbacks are back, and my understanding is that the anchovy fishers have a quota. So once they reach that quota, that's it for the season, and I'm guessing that's what they did. But also, some anchovies go to feed humans. We've got this issue of domoic acid in the bay right now, which is a normal. So there's a plankton, a dinoflagellate that produces this, and it's normal, but it's the amount that's there. The bloom gets exacerbated by fertilizer, agricultural runoff, and warmer temperatures. And we are seeing sea lions and birds. And what that poison does is it affects the nervous system. So you might have animals going in circles. Hitchcock's birds were thought to have been affected by domoic acid.
Uh-huh.
And so now, the anchovies are off limits to people. You can't sell them for human consumption right now. And we actually had 2 humpback whales in the bay maybe 6 weeks ago that died and stranded, came ashore, one in Hopkins Marine Station and one, I think it was Sunset Beach, and they both tested positive for domoic acid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yet another. It sounds like one of the takeaways from your answer is that the water is warmer, and what that means exactly, we don't necessarily know. I mean, the domoic acid is one outcome that may occur more frequently. Perhaps it's impacting the whale's migratory patterns or the things they're able to feed on, in turn impacting them. So we'll just put a pin in that warmer water answer and see what happens. I'm sure there are myriad researchers out there trying to get to the bottom of this.
This is true. And if you remember around 2014-15, there was the blob, which was this mass of warm water or hot water off the coast of California. And at that time, what we ended up seeing was millions of anchovies coming into the bay, presumably because the water was cooler, and followed by humpback whales. And humpback whales can be identified, we talked about killer whales, humpback whales are identified by the underside of their tails, their flukes. And they have distinctive coloration patterns and the trailing edge is different. And there was one day during that period where 100 different humpback whales were identified, and some of them had never been seen in the bay before. So while this heat wave can produce, at least for us, an abundance, it can also have adverse effects, and some animals end up being starving. I think one of the problems that pelicans are having is that because the anchovies are down deeper in the water column where it's cooler, that the pelicans can't get them down there. Mm-hmm. So they were starving. So
right.
The ocean ecosystem is incredibly complex, and we can't see most of it. We have a hard time measuring it. So it's a lot of, we don't know.
Well, on a lighter note, or perhaps not, we'll see how brutal some of these stories are, or fun. I want to give you a chance to talk about your book. I mentioned it in the introduction. Could you tell us about the book and some of the stories therein?
Okay. Well, this was sort of a labor of love, and a friend of mine and I, who is now a boat captain, and she's working in other parts of the world, went out and we interviewed 40 people about their most memorable wildlife encounters. And we wanted to sort of preserve some of these stories because we knew we had our own experiences, and our experiences are in the book. Mine actually has to do with the first time I saw a killer whale, different one, toss a dolphin through the air.
Wow.
It blew my mind. And that was a training experience where if I looked closely at my photo, I could see her tooth marks on this dolphin's body, but she didn't kill it. She could have bit it in half. She basically stunned it, and then her offspring came over and they made the kill. And she was right there, observing or giving directions. Mm-hmm. But we wanted to sort of highlight the human beings who live and work here. We wanted to highlight the biodiversity. I mean, it's an incredible biodiversity hotspot. So we had a little difficulty with that because almost every time we'd ask someone what their most memorable wildlife encounter was, they wanted to talk about a whale. And an author friend said, well, you should have just done it on whales. But we've got multiple species of whales. We've got dolphins. We've got white sharks. We've got nudibranchs. We've got seabirds. We've got coral. We've got plankton, which is the basis of the food chain. And then we illustrated, the book largely with my photos. If I didn't have photos of coral or the octopus garden down deep, we got those from the people who shared their stories with us. Mm-hmm. And I will say that coming up in August, the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary has the Sanctuary Exploration Center in Santa Cruz, and they're going to be hosting an invitational photo exhibit called She to Shining Sea. It's really hard for me to say. Featuring 10 women and non-binary photographers. So a different perspective on the bay. 10 of us will each have 2 images in the show. And on August 5th at 5:30 is going to be an opening, and there'll be a roundtable discussion, and I'll have my books and some prints available for sale that evening.
Great. Thank you for mentioning that. And that's at the center down there near Beach Street.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll also say Bookshop Santa Cruz carries the book. So
indeed. There's
yeah.
always that option. We've got just a couple of minutes here left. And so I wanted to end with this question, which is, you have been all over the world photographing wildlife. And so we'll just focus on the oceans, which is what we've done for most of the show anyway. But I get the sense that the Monterey Bay, it has a special place in your heart for photographing whales and all sea creatures. What to you, am I correct, first of all? And if so, what is unique about the Monterey Bay that separates it from everywhere else you've been?
So the answer is yes. It is a remarkable ecosystem. It happens to be the one I live on, and I have access to get out on the water, so that's really, really helpful. But the biodiversity here is like nothing I've seen anywhere else. I mean, you'll always see sea lions when you go out. You'll likely see harbor seals. You may see sea otters. You've got humpback whales. You've got, blue whales, fin whales, minke whales, gray whales. I'm probably missing something here. Dolphins. We regularly have Pacific white-sided dolphins and northern right whale dolphins, which are in the book and don't have dorsal fins, look very different. We've got Risso's dolphins here on a regular basis. I mean, I could go on until we run out of time naming all the various species plus all the birds. So there's always something to see. It's quite remarkable. Yeah.
All right. You have been listening to Jodi Frediani, a local award-winning nature photographer who is telling us mostly about whales this half hour, but she could have gone on many other subjects. She's a researcher, an expert in her field, and just an intrepid photographer who isn't afraid to mix it up with apparently killer whales. So Jodi, I really thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right. That has been Talk of the Bay. I'm your host, PK Haddis. We are signing off for the day.